Hello. While we wait until some people come on, I am going to talk about what I do here, who I am, and what I do. I am Dr. Stephanie Shuttler, and I am a wildlife biologist. I've been in this field for quite some time now. I can't believe it's been this long, but about close to 20 years now. And I have just found through my time being in this field over the past 20 years that things have changed so much over this time. And when I was on the job market, what happened to me was I found out that I was lacking some key skills and experiences that were really important for having the types of jobs that I wanted. So, what I learned from this is that I'm now sharing with you guys is that it's really best to look for the types of jobs that you want now because everything is just so competitive and so saturated. There's so many people out there who want these types of jobs, and there's not enough jobs to go around. So things have changed. It's not really the days anymore where you can take your degree and take your education and make it fit into a position. It's really better if you are a close match. Now, it's not to say that isn't impossible. You can do it, but it's much harder to do now than it was 20 years ago. So, I'm a wildlife biologist. I studied elephants for my PhD. You can go to my podcast, my YouTube to learn about my graduate research experience. But today, the question that I'm focusing on is, let me get the exact question up here. We're talking about, should you go directly to graduate school or take time off for internships and travel? So this is something that is frequently on people's minds. This is something that actually is on my mind. If you're struggling with this question, why don't you drop a comment and tell me what you're thinking about doing. Also in these lives, it's your opportunity to ask any question you want. So you can ask questions in regard to this topic, in regard to what I say, or if you have something else on your mind too related to careers, you absolutely can ask that question too. Okay, so I'm going to speak about this perspective from the United States too, because I'm from the United States. But and I guess this is a worldwide perspective, but there's this misconception out there that you get a degree and you get a job. And as I mentioned earlier before, what I learned from my experience on the job market is that's not true. I had the best degree. I had the most advanced degree that you can get for this field, a PhD. And I had postdoc experience, and as I went further along, I had years and years of postdoc experience. So there's so much more than just getting the degree, and people really focus on that education and just hitting the check mark of a degree, but they don't think about the experiences that they need that will make them competitive for the job. Because so many people have degrees that you're going to need something else to set you aside. Okay, wait, let's just answer this question quick. So thanks for asking. What about translating degrees into private sector, park ranger, maybe an expert at a zoo? Yeah, you absolutely can do that, and it depends on the type of degree that you're talking about. So if you want to be something like a park ranger doesn't really require a science degree. It can, but it's usually more education, usually more law enforcement. So if you can, again, like really narrow down on the type of job that you want and then see exactly what the qualifications are for that degree, then you can work backwards. But yes, you can absolutely translate your degree into these situations or these jobs, but you have to be careful because if you go too far, like I had my PhD and I found that I was overqualified for some jobs, like legit overqualified, that I was not competitive, I was not considered. So I recommend that people do the research first. I would say you can't go wrong with a master's. A master's is pretty adaptable, and I think nowadays you really need a master's to be able to get a job. I think it's really hard to get a job without a master's and be competitive. Okay, so after undergrad, I feel like there's this rush, there's this pressure to go into graduate school. And my sister actually gave me that pressure. No, she never went to graduate school or anything. But I remember thinking, like, I want to take the time off. So the question is all about, should you take time off or should you go directly into graduate school? Or should you go directly into graduate school? So I'm going to answer the first question and do what I did. I took time off. I took about 3 years off. I was planning to take 2, but I ended up taking 3. And I want to say that calling it time off isn't really accurate because I wasn't away from my degree. I wasn't away from my career. I was still working, but I wanted to take that time to explore jobs, to get some experience, to try some different things, and to see if that's what I like to do. So my sister would be like, you should just go to graduate school because once you're out of school, you are not going to want to go back. But graduate school is very different than undergrad. Graduate school really is like a job. You're doing research, and in science, you get a stipend for it. You get your tuition waived, so you don't get a lot of money, but you get paid to be there. And if you want more information about graduate school, I did a podcast series explaining what graduate school is like for scientists. It goes over all of that. So I wouldn't be scared to take time off because you're worried about not going to graduate school. Also, I've talked to a lot of people who are now considering going to graduate school because they're having a really hard time getting jobs. As I mentioned earlier, it can be really difficult, it is really difficult to get a job with a bachelor's. Really, you're much more competitive if you get a master's. If you have a bachelor's, you're honestly going to need a lot of experience to land a job. So the time off, and my suggestion is for the time off is that you don't take time off, but that you use this time wisely and you get experience. That's super important. So the person asked about internships and travel. Those aren't necessarily the same thing. I would say focus on getting work experience, internship experience, volunteer experience. It doesn't matter if you're getting paid or not. Ideally, you want to get paid, obviously, for your work, and there's a problem in our field where we don't pay people. But if you really want to go into this field, getting that experience is really key to being competitive. So use those years off between graduate school to get that experience. If you're having a hard time getting experience, check out the latest episode of the Conservation Careers podcast. We talk about how you can create your own, 2 episodes ago, we talk about how you can create your own experiences. And it's really cool. With citizen science nowadays, there's actually ways that you can get experience on your own and have metrics that qualify you for things. And I talked to somebody who knew someone who got a job because of their citizen science experience. So make sure you check out that episode. So spend that time wisely. Now, if you want to take that time off and travel, that's your prerogative. And I don't think it actually it probably is better to travel when you're younger, because if you do go to graduate school, and do go down the science route, you're going to have to need to, or you're most likely going to need to focus on publications, depending on what job you're going after. But most of them are really focused on publications, at least within the science realm. Yes, Bumblebee Watch. I haven't done that one, but I'm sure it's a really cool citizen science project. And there's lots that are really easy too that you can do on your own time, like even something as iNaturalist, and that's the example that Nando used in the podcast. So listen to that podcast, and he explains exactly how this person used iNaturalist to make them competitive for a job. Okay, so for travel, I don't think that travel is going to get you that far in your career. Unless you maybe combine it with citizen science experience, but travel in itself is not necessarily something that is desired by employers, unless perhaps it's hard. Well, it's hard to list this on your CV. You would have to really explain this in your cover letter. But one thing that is desirable is just the spirit and the attitude it takes to travel, but you have to be careful about what you do. So for example, in study abroad programs, you're in this group, you're in this environment, they're used to having American, European students travel there. It's a different environment. So like, for example, I did that in Kenya. When I went in Kenya as a student, I later worked there as an intern a couple of years later. My experiences were vastly different. And it was really my experience as an intern that really made me competitive for graduate school, because they knew I could stay there for a year, that I could organize things in Kenya, that I could deal with some of the tough times that innately happen with travel in developing countries. So that can stand out. But travel just for the sake of travel, if you're going backpacking throughout Australia, Europe, that's not necessarily going to help you. But if you want to do this for your life to have fun, then yeah, absolutely. But in terms of benefiting your career, that's not necessarily the best way to go. So my advice is, yes, definitely take some time off. But I don't also, before I end, I want to say that I don't necessarily think that taking this time off will necessarily give you clarity or will give you career direction. People have that misconception where like they'll just try different experiences, and yeah, of course it's helpful. Like you'll get to like experience different paths and see like if you like this one, if you like this one. But the problem is if you don't like something, or even if you do like something too, you're not being exposed to the whole spectrum of career options. And also, when you are in an internship or in a volunteer experience, you're not in ownership of your project. So you're just doing little parts of it. So you're going to do data analysis. And even if you're doing your whole undergrad thesis or something, I guarantee you the advisor, the graduate student cleaned up a lot of that project for you to make it easy and to make it doable, because they want you to have a successful project. Whereas in graduate school, you own that thing, and if there's problems with it, you have to solve it. It's your responsibility, and you work with your advisor, of course, to solve it, but lots of advisors are pretty hands-off. So taking time off will give you a little bit of clarity, but I would really take the time, again, like I mentioned in the beginning, go to fancyscientist.com, search for job tracker, download the job tracker, start tracking jobs that you ultimately want. That will help you out the most. Work backwards from that and really understand those jobs, because like I said, even with a PhD, there were jobs I was overqualified for. There were jobs that I didn't have enough qualifications for. The PhD is not the end-all be-all. Okay, any other questions from you guys before I wrap up? I have another piece of advice, but if you have some questions, comments, I'm just checking the Facebook group. I'd love if you comment. Thank you. I'm glad this was helpful for you. Okay. So the last thing that I wanted to leave you with is, say you do want to go directly to graduate school. Some people make that decision. If you go directly to graduate school, I would definitely do a master's and not do a PhD. So some people don't know this, but you can jump straight into a PhD program. So you can bypass your master's completely. That's what I did. Like I said, I took 3 years off and used that time to get work experience and job experience, and then I jumped straight into a PhD program. My advice to you though is if you're going to go straight through, do a master's. And quite honestly, my advice is to do a master's first in general, unless you're absolutely sure you want to go into academia. Even so though, there's so many benefits to getting your master's first because you get a bigger network, you get more publications. And I have a whole video on this and a whole blog post on this. So again, go to fancyscientist.com and just search masters. I think it's masters or PhD, and it should come up for you. Make sure you write masters with an apostrophe S. So yeah, don't feel bad about taking time off, but use your time off, as I say, smartly. Use your time off to your advantage and ask yourself questions about what do you want to see yourself doing every single day, and have a target. If you need help with any of this stuff, this is exactly what I do. I am a career mentor, so feel free to reach out and ask for some personal advice. Okay, so comments about working backwards to find what the job is looking for. Yeah, do you have a question about that, Dimitri? Basically what I'm saying is like find your ideal position, and or find a bunch of ideal positions, and this is what the job tracker does. And then it's a spreadsheet, and then it also gives you like an exercise where you're able to evaluate it too. And then you can go through the jobs once you have enough lined up and really figure out what is it about those jobs that are exciting to you, that are alluring to you, and then what do those jobs require? What kind of qualifications, what kind of education do they need? And then when you're going through graduate school, then you can make sure you get any sort of skills or experiences that you might have missed. My favorite example is botany. If you're applying for government jobs in the federal system, then you should get botany. You should take a botany class, because even as a PhD, I didn't take botany, and some of the jobs I actually don't qualify for because I didn't take botany and I don't have any comparable experience. So that's a classic example of like knowing the type of job you want and then getting what you need to get it. Okay guys, I hope that helped you out. If you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to me privately, or give me some ideas for types of questions that you guys have so I can answer more of these lives. Normally I do these every other week, but I'm going to be taking a break for a little bit. I really got a lot going on, so I'm saying no to some of my priorities so I can catch up and then come back with some really great high quality content for all you guys. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a fantastic day.